On the first day of Lunar New Year, my husband brought his mistress home to meet his parents, inside the villa that carried my name on the deed. I didn't smash plates. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I lowered my head and ate, calmly lifting bite after bite of food that had already gone cold, as if none of it belonged to me, as if the laughter at my dining table wasn't scraping my skin raw, as if the woman in red, sitting too close to my husband, wasn't quietly rewriting my marriage with every sweet syllable she poured into the air. But that ending came later, after everything finally detonated. A few days before, I was still the kind of woman who believed in reunion dinners and warm lights, and the lie we call family. The Lynn Villa glowed in winter darkness, lantern lights spilling across the snow-dry garden like honey. I stood on a wooden ladder beneath the porch, fingers numb from the cold, stubbornly adjusting the last red lantern until it lined up perfectly with the others. The golden foo character gleamed under the warm porch light. I'd had them custom made because I still believed devotion could buy peace. "Avery, please come down," Auntie Helen called from below, hands dusted with flour from folding dumplings. "Let me do it." "I'm almost done," I said, forcing cheer into my voice as I nudged the lantern straight. When my feet touched the last rung, my phone vibrated in my padded coat pocket. The screen flashed. Damien, Lynn. My heart jumped, foolish and trained. 3 days. He hadn't called once in 3 days. "Hey," I said softly, the way a good wife is supposed to sound. "You done at work?" "Avery," Damien said. And I heard keyboards, distant laughter. A room full of people who weren't me. "I'll be late tonight. Year-end closing. I have to stay." "But it's New Year's Eve," I whispered. "Tomorrow your parents are coming. We still need to—" "I know." He cut me off, then immediately smoothed his tone like a man flipping a practice switch. "I'll try to make it before dinner. You handle everything. I'm in a meeting. Bye." The call ended before I could breathe another word. My reflections stared back from the black screen pale, lips pressed tight under porch light. Inside my chest, something heavy settled like a stone that had been falling for months. 7 nights in a row. Work, clients, meetings, sudden travel. Excuses so frequent, they started sounding like routine. Auntie Helen looked at me carefully. "Young master won't be home for dinner again?" "He said he'll try," I lied, smiling so my face wouldn't crack. "Let's do the dumpling fillings, pork and cabbage, and chive with egg. His parents like those." Inside, the villa was dressed in my effort. Red cutlets on every doorway, fresh gladiolus in the hallway. Gift boxes stacked neatly, labelled in my handwriting. A pile of red envelopes on the tea table, stuffed with crisp new bills, each one paired with a handwritten blessing. I picked up a photo frame. 5 days after our wedding, Damien's arm around my shoulders, his chin resting on my head like a promise. His smile was bright enough to convince any woman she was safe. I couldn't pinpoint when it dimmed. Maybe when he became a vice president, when dinners became networking, when business trips multiplied into a blur of Shanghai, Beijing, Shenzhen, always somewhere else, always just out of reach. By 7, the table was full. Herbal chicken soup steaming, braised carp set with its head facing east, sweet and sour ribs, dumplings bobbing in a rolling pot. I sat alone, listening to the clock drag time forward 1 second at a time, watching heat fade from every dish until a thin skin of oil formed like a lid over my hope. At 9:30, the doorbell rang. I nearly ran. Damien stood outside in a pressed suit and a long coat tossed casually over one shoulder, a black rolling suitcase in his hand. No apology in his eyes. Just the bored exhaustion of a man returning from somewhere he enjoyed more than home. As he stepped closer, a scent rose off his collar, sweet, sharp, unfamiliar. Not the gentle cologne I'd bought him. Business trip, I asked. Because denial makes idiots of faithful women. Yeah, Guangzhou, he said too quickly, avoiding my gaze as he shrugged off his coat and headed straight for the bathroom. I reek of smoke. I'm showering. Guangzhou. Last week, it was Beijing. The shower roared. I stared at his suitcase like it was breathing. My hands moved before my pride could stop them. I unzipped it. Shirts, trousers, toiletries, and nestled between them a beige hair tie. Delicate, unmistakably feminine. A half-used lipstick, its tip worn down like it had been loved. My stomach sank. My fingers trembled as I found a folded receipt at the bottom. Duty-free. Sunya Haitang Bay. The timestamp was yesterday. Women's perfume. A designer handbag. The total could feed an ordinary family for a month. The water stopped. I shoved everything back exactly as it was, zipped the suitcase, and forced my face into calm before Damien walked out with wet hair and a towel in his hand. "Don't touch my stuff," he snapped, as if I'd dirtied him by looking. "I just wanted to help," I said, smiling with lips that felt like paper. "Are you hungry? I can reheat." "No." He walked past the untouched feast without a glance. "I ate on the plane. I'm sleeping. Tomorrow I need to pick up my parents." Fireworks bloomed outside, rattling the windows. Damien fell asleep within minutes, breathing steadily in the dark. I lay beside him with my eyes wide open, tears soaking the pillow until it turned cold against my cheek. In the morning, I woke early, like always. Stove blazing, soup simmering, dumplings lined neatly like little white moons. Damien appeared at 7 in a buttoned shirt and perfect tie. "A client is coming to pay respects today," he said lightly, stirring coffee as if he were discussing weather. "Make extra lunch." "What client comes on New Year's Day?" I asked. "And your parents are arriving." "On the way," he said with a smile that refused to meet my eyes. "One more set of chopsticks. No big deal." At 10, the doorbell rang again. Damien sprang up with a brightness I hadn't seen directed at me in months. A young woman stood at the door, 24. Maybe. Red coat, curled hair, flawless eyeliner, wine-coloured lips, a luxury fruit gift set cradled in her arms. Behind her, my in-laws beamed like they'd won the lottery. "Olivia's here," my mother-in-law chirped, already taking the girl's hand, already forgetting I existed. "Come in, sweetheart. It's freezing outside." Damien turned and introduced her with the carelessness of a man tossing away a wrapper. "Olivia Bai, a very important partner. Olivia, this is my wife." "Happy New Year, sis," Olivia said, smile bright as peach blossoms, eyes sliding over me from head to toe, polite, sharp, amused. On her wrist, a platinum bracelet with a distinctive pattern. On Damien's left wrist, the same. A needle of pain pierced clean through my chest. But my voice stayed smooth. "Welcome. Lunch is ready. Please sit while it's hot." At the table, they adored her openly. My mother-in-law piled Olivia's bowl high. My father-in-law joked about grandchildren as if I hadn't miscarried twice under this roof. Damien praised her work with a pride that once belonged to me. Then Olivia stood, all sweetness and clumsy concern. "Let me get ribs for you, sis." Her bracelet flashed near my face as her hand slipped. The steaming soup tipped golden liquid splashing onto the back of my hand. "Ah, I'm so sorry," she cried, loud and theatrical. Before I could even inhale through the burn, Damien's voice turned cold. "Avery, how can you be so careless?" That was the moment something inside me made a clean, final sound, like a thread, snapping. like a lock clicking shut. Receipt, hair tie, perfume, lies, important partner, matching bracelets, the way his parents looked at her like she was already family. This wasn't business. This was betrayal walking into my home in red, escorted by the people who were supposed to respect me. I stood, calm enough to frighten myself. It's fine. I'll change. Girl. In the bedroom, I locked the door, stared at my pale face in the mirror, and felt the strangest thing settle over me, not collapse, not hysteria, but ice-clear focus. I called my college best friend, Miles Reed, the most ruthless divorce attorney in the city. He picked up before the second ring. "Miles," I said, voice quiet, each word sharpened. "I need you. I think I'm getting a divorce." "Where are you?" he asked instantly. "At home," I said, and a bitter laugh slipped out. "Downstairs they're celebrating New Year's. My husband brought his mistress home and my in-laws are flirting with her like she's the bride." A restrained curse on the other end. Then Miles's voice went professional. "Don't explode. Smile. Eat. Collect everything. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. My office. We start with assets." I hung up. My hand still burned. My pride burned more. Downstairs, laughter rose again, Olivia's voice sweet as poison. And I realized, if this was a war, then my enemy had already sat at my table. So I would finish the meal. I would let them enjoy their little performance. Then, when the tea was poured and the last polite smile had been spent, I would make one phone call and have the entire Lynn family moved out of my villa before the incense smoke of New Year could even fade. Because some doors don't close softly. Some doors shut like a coffin lid. "You look like a zombie," Miles said bluntly, dragging me into his private office and shutting the door behind us. "Did you sleep at all?" "Barely." My voice came out scraped raw. I sank into the chair like my bones had forgotten how to hold me up. "She told me last night. She's pregnant." Miles's expression tightened, but he didn't react the way people on TV do. No dramatic gasp, no moral speech, just a measured inhale, like a surgeon washing his hands before an operation. "Look at this first," he said. He opened a drawer and slid a thick file across the desk toward me. I flipped it open. Bank statements. 6 months. Neatly organized. Certain transactions highlighted in harsh yellow, bright enough to feel like a warning flare. "This is your husband's company account," Miles said, tapping the lines with a pen. 2 transfers. Total. 800,000 RMB. Sent to Olivia Studio, a private entity registered under Olivia Bai's name. My fingertip traced the numbers without meaning to, as if I could rub them away. "It's a shell," Miles continued, voice flat. "No real business activity, just a pretty name to catch the money." He turned the page, and there it was worse, somehow. Because it was clean, legal, signed. A copy of a property purchase contract. Buyer, Olivia Bai. Down payment, 1 million RMB. Date signed, 2 months ago. I didn't have to ask where it came from. The answer was written between every line. "Filed as PR and client relations expenses," Miles said, a cold smile cutting across his mouth. "Men who cheat love using corporate money. It feels less like theft when it's not coming from their own pocket." He pointed at the address and then looked up at me. "Star River Villas," he said. "New development. 10 minutes on foot from your home. 1 million. The number flashed in my mind like a blade catching light. Last year, Damien told me the company was struggling. He said we couldn't go to the Maldives like he promised. He said we had to be practical. I'd nodded like a good wife and swallowed disappointment like a vitamin. So that was the Maldives. It had been converted into a down payment for a new home he was building for someone else. Miles poured me a glass of water and pushed it toward me. About the pregnancy. I took it with fingers that didn't quite feel attached to my body. I had someone check hospital records, he said. She did visit OB/GYN, but there's no official prenatal registration yet. It could be early, or it could be a performance. The water slid down my throat like something trying to put out a fire inside me. Real or fake? I said quietly, opening my eyes. Damien and his parents believe it. Miles watched me for a moment, like he was measuring whether I would splinter or sharpen. That explains their sudden confidence, he said. I let out a short laugh, dry, humorless. So, what now, Miles? I scream. I smash the house to pieces. I kneel and beg them to return my 5 years. No, his voice sharpened. First, you protect what's yours. Who is the villa registered to? Me, I said. My parents gave it as my dowry. It's in my name. Good, Miles nodded once. That's your strongest fortress. Second, evidence, cheating, asset transfer, anything that proves intent. He slid a small USB drive across the desk, then reached back into the drawer and placed something else beside it, a tiny black device, no bigger than a key fob. On the USB is a checklist, he said. What to record, what to photograph, who to approach, what to avoid. My eyes stayed on the recorder. And this, Miles added, holding my gaze now, is the most important part. You act normal. You do not spook them. You don't poke the snake unless your boot is already on its head. I swallowed. So I pretend. You perform, Miles corrected. In divorce wars, the calm person wins. The emotional person pays. When I left his office, my purse was heavier. A USB, a recorder, and a warning that felt like a stone tied to my spine. I didn't go home. Instead, I drove out toward the suburbs, to the very place Damien had secretly chosen as his second life. Star River's sales centre was bright enough to make the winter outside look dirtier. A glossy scale model sat in the middle of the room, tiny villas under tiny streetlights, arranged like a world designed for people who never had to ask the price. A sales representative approached me with a practiced smile. Hello, ma'am. How can I help you? I smiled back, polite and thin. I'd like to learn about your villas, especially the units signed in the last 2 months. I spoke slowly, clearly. I wasn't there to buy. I was there to stare directly into the future my husband had prepared for another woman, and to decide I would no longer be an extra in my own life. Half an hour later, I knew exactly which villa Olivia Bai had purchased. I knew the down payment had been paid in one lump sum. I knew the bank had fast-tracked the remaining loan approval, and I knew why. The guarantor listed on the file was Damien Lynn, signed under the company name. He had used corporate money, corporate credibility, corporate paperwork while standing in my kitchen telling me finances were tight, while cancelling my anniversary trip, while watching me count dumplings like a woman who still believed love was measured in effort. On the way back, I stopped at an electronics market and walked into a shop where the shelves were lined with small devices that could ruin big lies. I need micro cameras, I told the clerk. Wide angle, phone connection, and a few handheld recorders discreet. If this was a war, then intelligence came first. No evidence meant nothing. Assumptions don't survive in court. Feelings don't protect property. The villa was quiet when I returned. Damien and his parents weren't back yet. Perfect. I moved through the house like a ghost with a plan. In the master bedroom, I hid a micro camera inside the bedside lampshade, lens angled toward the bed. In the living room, I tucked another into a large vase by the TV, adjusted to capture the sofa, hallway, and front door. In Damien's study, I removed our wedding photo, fixed a tiny device behind the frame, and hung it back precisely the way it was, straight, centered, innocent. I was sealing my life into evidence. I had just pressed the last adhesive strip into place when the doorbell rang. My pulse spiked. I shoved the remaining devices into a hallway drawer, inhaled once, and opened the door. A delivery man stood there with a luxury-wrapped box. Package for Mr. Damien Lynn. I took it automatically, then my eyes caught the sender's name. Oan Oan. Not her full name. Just two soft, handwritten words. I stood very still. Logic told me to place it by Damien's shoes and pretend I'd never looked. Instinct whispered back, cold and undeniable. Whatever he's hiding is exactly what you must see. So I slid a box cutter under the bottom seam, careful, controlled, not tearing the wrapping. Inside was a Hermes tie box. Deep blue. New season pattern, the kind Damien used to point out in magazines. Beneath it was a card. To my beloved director Lynn. Happy New Year. I hope this is the year we can be together openly. Love, Olivia. My hand trembled so hard I almost dropped it. Openly. So the plan had never been secrecy forever. The plan was to erase me, replace me, and walk into their Star River villa like my marriage had been a temporary rental. I photographed the card and the tie, then sealed everything back exactly as it was, using a fresh strip of clear tape so the box looked untouched. I placed it by the front door where Damien couldn't miss it. At 7, Damien finally came home, carrying shopping bags, looking busy and strangely pleased. Avery, he said, and for once, he handed me a bag like a husband trying to remember his role. I got you something. I opened it. A loose, shapeless knit dress in a dull colour more suitable for a middle-aged aunt than a 30-year-old woman. The tag was still on. The price had been slashed in red, 399 RMB. On his wrist, a brand new Rolex caught the hallway light worth hundreds of dresses like this. Thank you, I said, smiling through the nausea. He didn't look up. His eyes stayed glued to his phone. His thumb moved too fast, and a private curve lifted at the corner of his mouth, the kind of smile men don't waste on wives. I glanced at the gift box by the door. You have a package. Damien froze just a fraction. But I saw it. He snatched it up too quickly, eyes flicking to the sender name, tension and delight tangling in his expression like a confession. It's company materials, he said, already walking away. I'll check it in my office. I went into the kitchen, but my phone was in my hand. The surveillance app was already open. On the screen, Damien shut the study door, opened the box, lifted the tie, held it to his collar, and smiled at his reflection like a man trying on a new life. Then he didn't hang it with the others. He hid it. Deep. In the back of the closet, where you keep important things. And downstairs, the house kept pretending it was still mine. The timestamp on the recording lined up perfectly with my next class reunion Saturday. I laughed once, sharp and bitter until the corners of my eyes burned. They thought they were arranging a flawless chessboard. They had no idea every move was landing in the ears of the woman they'd labelled obedient, soft, too dumb to notice the knife sliding between her ribs. I deleted the duplicate copy from my phone and kept only the original file. I compressed it, renamed it something meaningless, and tucked it into an encrypted folder that required a passcode. Even I had to pause and remember. Then I backed it up again somewhere separate. Somewhere so hidden, I would need to be fully awake, fully sober, fully alive to retrieve it. When I finished, I set the phone down and stared at myself in the mirror. My eyes were swollen from sleeplessness. But for the first time in a long time, there was no pleading left in them, no bargaining, no, maybe if I try harder, only cold resolve. Right then, I made my decision. If they wanted to paint me as the guilty one, then I would drag the truth into the light so violently that the entire story would change shape around it until we all saw who would be begging for peace after the divorce. The next morning, while everyone ate breakfast like we were still a family, I placed my spoon down gently and said, as if it were a random thought, "I've been thinking, maybe we should renovate the villa." Damien's chopsticks froze mid-air. "Now?" "Yes." I smiled, soft and harmless. "Spring is coming. The weather's better. Less dust. We can move out temporarily. You and your parents can stay at a hotel for convenience. I'll go stay with my parents." A flicker of calculation crossed Damien's face so fast he probably thought no one could see it. He glanced at his parents. The three of them exchanged a look that lasted only seconds, but it carried the weight of a private agreement. "I need to think about it," Damien said, clearing his throat, trying to sound calm. "I already contacted a renovation company," I added brightly, pressing while the door was open. "An old college friend runs it. He'll give me a discount, and I can handle the design myself. No need to hire an outside designer." The hesitation in Damien's eyes visibly wavered. Renovations meant endless excuses to work late. It meant nights away without suspicion. It meant time to build his other life, while mine stood packed in boxes. "Fine," he said at last, nodding. "When do we start?" "Next week." I kept my tone casual, like I'd been planning this for months. "This weekend is my class reunion. After that, I'll go straight to my parents' house. You just need to arrange your parents' hotel first." His mouth lifted without permission. He didn't even realize he was smiling. Inside me, something turned to ice. "Go ahead, Damien. Go play house with your mistress. Soon enough, you'll learn who gets pushed off the board." That afternoon, I used measurements for the renovation as an excuse to bring the contractor over. While Damien and his parents were out, I installed additional surveillance devices, newer, sharper, placed where their family meetings always happened. One in the living room corner, aimed directly at the sofa. One in the smaller lounge where Olivia loved to sit with her legs crossed, sipping tea like she already owned the place. More along the hallways, the entryway, the study. By the time I finished, there was almost nowhere left in that house where they could plot without being recorded. That night, Damien came home from work. The moment he stepped through the door, I saw a faint, peach-coloured lipstick smear on the collar of his white shirt, exactly the shade Olivia wore on New Year's Day. Last time, I had forced my eyes shut and called it imagination. This time, I simply logged it like a date on a calendar. I sat on the bedroom rug and spread old sketches across the floor. Architectural drawings I'd kept, shoved at the bottom of a suitcase for years. Corners curled, paper yellowed with time. "What's all this?" Damien asked, drifting closer. "Old designs." I didn't look up. "I'm thinking of going back to work." "Now?" His brows pulled together. "Why not?" I answered lightly. "If the house is being renovated, staying home will be boring. Working will keep me busy." He didn't like it. I could feel that dislike in the way the air shifted. A docile wife with no income, no career, no separate accounts she was convenient to use and convenient to discard. But he couldn't find a reasonable argument against it, not with my smile still in place. So he went into the bathroom and shut the door a little harder than necessary. I stayed there, alone with the drawings, staring at lines that used to be my future. 10 years ago, I'd been one of the brightest architecture students in my year. A study abroad opportunity had been in my hands, and I'd let it go because a man promised me a life that now looked like a trap disguised as a home. Maybe it was time to return those stolen years to myself. Before bed, I reached for my vitamins out of habit and tipped one tablet into my palm. As I lifted it toward my lips, a strange smell caught me, faint, bitter, lingering. not the clean, chalky scent of supplements. Something herbal, like ginseng, but wrong, in a way my body recognized before my mind did. I spat the tablet into a tissue. Under the light, the rim had a thin discoloration so subtle I would have missed it if I weren't already living like a hunted animal. My heartbeat roared in my ears. I wrapped the tablet carefully, sealed it in a small plastic bag, and hid it deep inside my purse. Then I went to the bathroom, ran the faucet loud, and gagged over the sink on purpose, making sure anyone outside would assume I'd simply felt sick. When I crawled back into bed, my hands and feet were cold. Someone was trying to poison me. Damien, Olivia. Or worse, his parents, the retired nurse who understood exactly what dosage caused discomfort and what dosage created a natural death on paperwork. The next morning, I took the tablet to a toxicology lab Miles had recommended. The 2-hour wait stretched like 2 days. I sat in a nearby cafe, tapping my nails against the table so hard the sound began to feel like a countdown. When they called my name, my legs almost refused to stand. The results were worse than my imagination. A small amount of an organic cyanide compound, low dose. Long-term exposure could cause chronic poisoning. Symptoms could mimic a heart attack, sudden cardiac failure, a clean obituary, a simple signature. My fingers trembled so violently I nearly dropped the report. I called Miles. My voice sounded like sandpaper. He said only one thing. "Come to my office. Now." "Lena Ward, we need to talk." Damien's voice came through the line unnervingly calm, too calm, the way a storm goes quiet right before it breaks. No screaming like last time. No frantic accusations. Just a flat, controlled tone that made my skin prickle. "Tomorrow, 10 a.m. The villa is under renovation," I replied, drawing out each word on purpose. "You can't get in anymore." He gave a low, humorless laugh. "Don't play dumb. You changed the locks. Be there at 10. And don't bring a lawyer unless you want to regret it for the rest of your life." The line went dead. I stared at my phone for a beat, then called Miles. "He's cornered," Miles said after I repeated every detail. "This is the last big move. You need to be extremely careful. Men like him get violent when they can't control the narrative." "I know," I said, my voice steady in a way that surprised even me. "That's why. I have a plan." That night, I went through the villa's surveillance system one more time, every camera, old and newly installed. Living room, hallways, study, front gate, backyard, every angle clean, every feed stable. Then I added insurance where people never look. Tiny audio recorders disguised as pens, one tucked behind a row of books, another under a framed print, another resting innocently on the shoe shelf by the entryway. At the front gate, I installed a camera that live-streamed directly to my parents' television. One click of a channel, and they'd have eyes on the front door in real time. If anything went wrong, there would be witnesses. If anyone tried to twist the truth would already be saved, duplicated, preserved. At 9 the next morning, I arrived early and walked the rooms like a general inspecting a battlefield. At 9:50, 3 cars rolled up to the gate. Damien stepped out first, jaw tight, eyes bruised with exhaustion and rage. His parents followed, and then between them Olivia Bloom. She wore an oversized maternity coat, her hand cradling a belly that was still perfectly flat, but she moved like a woman made of glass. Weak, fragile, sacred. The kind of performance that made older women rush to protect her without thinking. I inhaled slowly, opened my phone, and hit record. Then I pressed the button and opened the gate. The moment it clicked, Damien stormed into the living room without even taking off his shoes. "Lena, what the hell are you trying to do?" He barked, voice hoarse, eyes wild. Behind him, his parents half-carried Olivia, as if one wrong breath might harm the baby. I sat in the center of the sofa, hands folded, legs crossed, calm enough to be terrifying. "That's my question," I said mildly, tilting my head. "You brought a whole parade into my home, charging in like a raid. What are you planning to do, intimidate me into silence?" "My home," Damien scoffed. "This is marital property. Don't forget I own half. Legally, I have every right to be here." "True," I nodded. "If you hadn't committed major marital misconduct, adultery, asset concealment, attempted murder, those add up to more than misconduct, don't they?" My gaze flicked to Olivia's stomach. She took a reflexive step back, clinging to her coat like it was armor. Damien's parents went pale in unison. His mother recovered first, high voice, righteous face, the familiar script of blame already loaded on her tongue. "Lena, how did you become like this?" she cried. "Our family has never treated you badly. What more do you want? Not treated me badly?" I laughed, one sharp blade of a sound. "Do you mean the slow poison in my vitamins? Or the way you handpicked a mistress for your son and invited her into my living room to rehearse being your future daughter-in-law?" "What nonsense!" His father slammed his palm on the table. "Who poisoned you?" I didn't answer him. I turned to Olivia instead, softening my tone on purpose, sweet as a trap. "Olivia, morning sickness must be miserable. How many months are you now?" She blinked, caught off guard by the false gentleness, then quickly leaned into the role. Four months, she whispered, voice trembling, eyes shining with well-timed tears. "It's been hard, but it's better now." 4 months. I widened my eyes like I'd just realized something. How strange, because 3 months ago, the prenatal report our housekeeper found in this very house clearly said you weren't pregnant. Olivia's face drained so fast it looked like someone had pulled the plug on her blood. Damien whipped his head toward her. "What prenatal report?" "Don't listen to her," Olivia stammered. "That hospital made a mistake. The file was wrong." "Let me save you the trouble of lying." I lifted the TV remote and pressed a button. The large screen in the living room lit up with a scanned report, zoomed in so every line was unmistakable. Result: no pregnancy detected. Silence fell like a body hitting the floor. Damien's hand shot out and clamped around Olivia's wrist. "You lied to me?" he snarled. "You said it was a clerical error." Olivia began sobbing instantly, mascara already threatening to run. I was scared. I didn't want to lose you. You promised me." "Enough!" Damien's mother cut in sharply, panicking as her precious storyline collapsed. She swung toward me, trying to wrest control back with the only weapon she had: moral outrage. "Lena, what do you want? Did you call us here just to humiliate everyone? What do I want?" I stood up and stepped closer to the TV, remote still in my hand. "I'll show you." I clicked to the next file. A video filled the screen, Damien and Olivia tangled together on my bed, my wedding bed. The camera angle wasn't flattering, but it was undeniable. Their faces, their voices, the room, the details no editing could invent. Damien lunged forward like he could tear the truth out of the air. I shifted back one step, exactly one, and pressed the emergency alert on my phone. The villa's alarm system exploded into sound. A shrieking, skull-splitting wail that froze everyone in place. "I've called the police," I said, lifting my phone so they could see the active call log. "Domestic intimidation, illegal entry, attempted property damage, and attempted murder. That's a lot of charges to juggle." Damien's face turned the color of wet ash. His father grabbed him by the arm and hissed something in his ear. "Calm down." "Shut up. Don't make it worse." Olivia collapsed onto the sofa, clutching her flat stomach and shaking as if a breeze could kill her. Damien's mother scrambled for a different mask. Her voice softened. Her face rearranged itself into concerned sweetness. Lena, we're family. Why do this? Damien made a mistake. He was confused. Give him a chance. A chance? My smile didn't reach my eyes. When you were discussing how to poison me slowly, did any of you think about giving me a chance to stay alive? Her expression cracked. You're slandering me, she screamed. I didn't argue. I walked straight to the side cabinet near the dining area, pulled out a drawer, and placed 2 items on the table like exhibits in court. The old vitamin bottle and the toxicology report. This contains a cyanide derivative, I said, speaking slowly, clearly. A low dose daily for 3 months can cause sudden cardiac arrest. You're a retired nurse. You know exactly how to kill someone and make it look natural. Damien's mother stumbled back, white as paper, eyes darting desperately to her husband, then her son, like she was searching for someone to throw under the bus. It wasn't me, she whispered, shaking. And this, I said, tapping my phone, will refresh everyone's memory. I played the audio. Her voice filled the room, calm, practical, chilling, just a little each day. When her heart stops, the doctor will call it sudden death. What if they investigate? Olivia's voice, smaller, eager. No one will investigate. A woman in her 30s, depressed, no children, heart failure. Who's going to dig deeper? The recording ended. Olivia shrank into the corner of the sofa, trembling so hard her whole body rattled. Damien stared at his mother like he'd never seen her before. His father's mouth opened, then closed. Shock, horror, calculation, all fighting for space on his face. Damien's mother snapped into hysteria. It's fake, she shrieked. It's all fake. Let forensics decide, I said, sliding my phone into my pocket. Now, get out of my house. And that was when Damien did something I hadn't expected. He dropped to his knees in front of me. Lena, I was wrong, he choked out, voice breaking into an ugly wail. She seduced me. She ruined me. It was her. He spun and pointed at Olivia like she was a disease he wanted to cut off. I'll end it, right now. We can start over. I swear. I looked down at him, the man I'd once loved, with the kind of devotion that turns a woman into a shadow of herself, and felt only a clean, cold disgust. Damien, I said, enunciating every syllable. You make me sick. I turned, walked to the front door, and threw it open wide. Get out! Olivia suddenly sprang up. Something flashed silver in her hand as she lunged toward me with a warped scream. Damien reacted on instinct, swinging his arm out. Metal clattered across the tile with a sharp, screaming sound. A small fruit knife skidded to a stop at my feet. What are you doing? Damien shouted, terrified. It's your fault! Olivia shrieked, mascara streaking as she sobbed and raged at the same time. You promised you'd divorce her. You promised me a home. You promised me a name. And then, from far down the street, sirens, getting closer, closer. Olivia froze, eyes wide, and tried to bolt for the door. But the door swung inward hard from the outside. 2 officers stepped in. Their gaze swept the room in seconds. The knife on the floor. Damien on his knees. His parents ghost pale. Olivia trembling like a cornered animal. And me standing beside the open door with my phone still in hand. Who called in a domestic dispute involving a weapon? The lead officer asked. Voice cold and sharp. I exhaled, lifted my chin, and stepped forward. I did, I said. I'm the homeowner, and I have a lot to report. The world spun. It wasn't the dramatic kind of dizziness people describe in novels, the delicate, poetic kind. It was violent, brutal, My ears rang until every sound turned into a thick, distant hum, and before I realized my knees had given out, I was sitting on the wooden floor with my back against the cabinet like someone had unplugged my spine. My mind went blank, stripped down to a single sentence that kept repeating like a curse. My baby didn't die. The child I had mourned for 5 years, every anniversary, every sleepless night, every dream where I could never see the face clearly, hadn't vanished into thin air. He was alive somewhere. He might be laughing right now, learning to tie his shoes. Calling another woman, Mum. The thought was so sharp it made me nauseous. Then my phone rang, and I flinched like I'd been struck. The screen showed the name of the maternity hospital, the same one where I'd once been an inpatient. The same sterile corridors where my grief had been packaged into paperwork and sent home with me. The head nurse's voice came on smooth and procedural, like she was reading from a laminated script. Miss Ward, this is a reminder for your general health check tomorrow morning. Please fast no food after midnight. Nurse, I cut in, my voice too calm to be normal. In 2018, May 15th, I had a miscarriage procedure at your hospital. Do you remember? There was a pause on the other end, short, then longer, like she was flipping through drawers in her memory and finding one that resisted. I would need to check the records, she said cautiously. Why are you bringing up something from years ago? Because I just found out, I said, each word iced over, that I may never have miscarried. My child might still be alive. This time the silence stretched until it became its own answer. When she finally spoke again, her voice had changed. It wasn't smooth anymore. It was rough, like she'd swallowed sand. Miss Ward, it's complicated. Back then, your husband, Mr. Sterling, he gave very specific instructions. My blood turned to stone. Damien, I whispered. What instructions? She exhaled shakily, like she'd been holding this sentence in her chest for 5 years. He said you were mentally fragile, that you wouldn't survive the shock of losing the baby. He insisted the doctor tell you the pregnancy had failed. Another pause, a smaller, frightened one. But in reality, it wasn't a miscarriage. It was a premature delivery. The baby was strong. He was transferred to the NICU. Her voice dropped even lower. After that, an American couple completed an adoption through an intermediary. The phone slid out of my fingers and hit the floor. The screen stayed bright. The call still connected. The head nurse still talking her words, now muffled and distant, as if I'd fallen underwater. 5 years. 5 years of carrying an invisible coffin inside my ribs. 5 years of waking up from dreams with my arms empty, my throat raw from screaming into a pillow so no one would hear. And the whole time my son had been alive somewhere else, growing taller every day, learning a new language, being kissed goodnight by strangers with kind hands while I was never allowed to know. Damien had decided. Damien had signed. Damien had severed the cord between my body and my child like it was a thread he could snip with office scissors. Who gave him that right? What kind of man looks at a mother and thinks, I get to choose what she's allowed to love? The rage rose so fast it felt like my organs caught fire. I didn't think. I didn't breathe. I snatched my car keys and ran. I drove to the old workers' compound I knew he'd been hiding in ever since the board kicked him out. A 4-story building with peeling paint and rusted railings, where the hallway lights flickered like they were dying too. The corridor on the 4th floor was damp and dark. It smelled like stale cooking oil and old cigarettes like a life that had given up pretending. I pounded on the door so hard my wrist burned. A few seconds later, it cracked open. His father stood there. He froze when he saw me, guilt flickering across his face so quickly he might have hoped I wouldn't catch it. Lena, why are you... Where's Damien? I pushed past him, without waiting for permission. The apartment was cramped, suffocating. Cardboard boxes stacked like walls. Curtains pulled tight. The air dim and sour, heavy with defeat. Damien stepped out of the back room, unshaven, hollow-eyed. A shadow of the man who used to stand on stage in tailored suits and talk about vision like he owned the future. When he saw me, he went still, as if his brain refused to process the fact that I was real. "Lena?" I raised my hand and slapped him with every ounce of grief I'd swallowed for 5 years. The crack echoed off the walls. His face jerked to the side. A red mark bloomed instantly on his cheek. "Where is my child?" I asked, each word bitten off, sharp enough to draw blood from my tongue. "Where is he?" Damien staggered back, palm pressed to his face. Panic flashed in his eyes. "What child? What are you talking about?" "Don't act," I hissed. I pulled the ultrasound photo from my pocket and threw it at his chest. It fluttered down between us like a dead bird. "The baby I delivered that year," I said, voice ragged with fire. "You told me he died. You told me I lost him." My breath shook, as if my body couldn't contain the heat. "What right did you have? What right did you have to give him away? To let another woman raise him while I—" His parents rushed in from the kitchen at the noise. The moment they saw the ultrasound photo on the floor, both of them changed. Their faces went paper white, like someone had wrapped hands around their throats and squeezed. No denial came fast enough. No lie could outrun that image. I didn't remember leaving. I only remember the next scene, bright lights, the stench of disinfectant so strong it coated my tongue, and the sickening metallic smell of dried blood that made my stomach twist. I stood outside the ICU, staring through thick glass. Damien lay motionless on the bed, tubes and wires snaking out of him like punishment. The monitor beeped steadily cold, indifferent, counting out the seconds of a man's unraveling. If this had been the old me, I would have cried. I would have run in, grabbed his hand, asked if he was in pain, as if his pain mattered more than mine. But now I felt only one thing: an ending. A doctor walked by and stopped at my side. "Are you family of Mr. Sterling?" "No." I shook my head, voice calm in a way that felt foreign. "Just his ex-wife." The doctor blinked, then nodded professionally. "He's stable for now. He'll need observation." The impact was strong, mild concussion. But his life isn't in danger. Lucky. I watched Damien's chest rise and fall, and thought about my own life, how it had been poisoned drop by drop, how my son had been traded like a commodity, how I'd begged the universe for a grave that didn't exist. Then I nodded once. "Let him live," I said softly. "Let him live long enough to hear the verdict, long enough to watch everything get taken from him one piece at a time, the way he tried to take everything from me." I turned and walked out of the ICU. With every step, my feet felt steadier. The days that followed became a cyclone. Miles filed the full report on the illegal adoption network Damien and Victor Hayes had participated in. The police opened a new investigation, adding charges: child trafficking, falsified medical records, conspiracy. Economic investigators sent formal notices too, demanding Damien cooperate as a key figure in multiple cases. Professor Thomas Rowan connected me to a law firm in San Francisco. On a video call, the attorney spoke carefully, her tone firm but not cruel. "Don't start with custody demands," she advised. "First, we tell them the truth. We position this as protecting the child's best interest. You don't want to look like an enemy. You want to look like his mother, who was robbed." I stared at my own face on the screen, pale. Eyes too bright, jaw clenched like a lock. "I'm not trying to punish them," I said. "I'm trying to do one right thing. For my son, not for any man." After the letter was sent, time slowed into something that felt like winter. I buried myself in design work during the day, blueprints, spatial models, meetings where people spoke in square footage and budgets like nothing in the world could break a woman's heart. At night, I sat alone with Ethan's photo. My son, black hair, dark eyes, a smile that looked like mine when I was small before I learned what betrayal tastes like. But his gaze had a quiet steadiness I'd never had at that age, as if life had been gentle enough to let him grow without armor. He was safe. He was loved. The selfish part of me, the desperate, hungry mother, wanted to rip him back across the ocean and lock the world out. But the other part of me, the part that had finally learned how darkness works, whispered something softer. At least he didn't grow up under Damien's shadow. At least no one dripped poison into his life with a smile. And still, he was mine. Mine in blood. Mine in bone. Mine in the 5 years of grief that had hollowed me out and somehow failed to kill me. When the criminal hearing reopened for Damien and Victor, rain fell in a thin, relentless sheet. I wore a dark suit. My hair was pinned up tight. I sat in the back row of the public gallery, hands folded, spine straight, face unreadable. Damien was escorted in with his arm in a cast, skin grey, eyes sunken, looking nothing like the young executive who once strutted through glass offices like a king. Victor Hayes kept his composure, pressed shirt, neat tie, but every time the prosecutor read out another unexplained transaction, his mouth twitched. Charges include falsified financial reports, embezzlement, bribery, and the facilitation of an illegal infant adoption. Each word landed like a hammer, not on my skull this time, but on the walls they'd built around themselves. Miles leaned toward me. You could request leniency for Damien as the victim in the trafficking element. No, I kept my eyes on the bench. I don't need mercy. I need the court to do its job. Damien turned to look for me when the judge spoke. His eyes were red, begging for an impossible thing, my softness, my weakness, my old self. I didn't look back. I had already buried that woman. Victor Hayes didn't just want the paper trail erased. He wanted me erased too, because as long as I was breathing, I was a living signature proof that the child sale had a mastermind and that the ecological dome design had an owner. If I died, if my files burned, if my evidence disappeared into ash, then he would be the only one left standing in clean light, hands folded, collecting profit, like he'd never touched the dark. I need the original draft, I said, and my own voice startled me with how steady it sounded. I shoved my chair back so hard it scraped the floor, then started tearing through the old cardboard boxes stacked in my study. The lids came off one by one. Dust lifted into the air in soft grey clouds, making me cough. But my hands didn't slow. I remember there was a hand sketch, I muttered, half to myself, half to Professor Rowan. You made me swear I'd keep it safe. Books, folders, old presentation boards, my entire youth sealed in paper and tape. Then a yellowed slip of paper slid out from the gap of a battered hardcover and fluttered to the floor like something trying to escape. Let me, Professor Rowan said. He bent to pick it up. His eyes scanned the lines, and for a fraction of a second, it was like all the blood drained from his face. Professor? My stomach tightened. What is it? I snatched the note from him before he could decide how to soften it. Time stains blurred parts of the paper, but the handwriting was clear enough to freeze my spine. The baby is healthy. The transfer went according to plan. The design has been handled. No one will trace the connection. V. My fingers went numb. That single initial V was a blade. Victor. A note light as dried leaf, yet it weighed so much in my palm I could barely keep my arm lifted. It confirmed two truths I'd been trying not to say out loud. He had planned my son's disappearance, and he had personally reached into my life and stolen the work I'd built with my own hands. My own sleepless nights. My own stubborn faith. Animal, Professor Rowan said, and I almost didn't recognize him. He was always composed, always careful with words, but now his eyes were dark, voice scraped raw with disgust. He didn't just take your child, he added, staring at me like he wished he could carve the guilt out of my ribs. He stole the piece of you poured your youth into. My knuckles whitened as I crushed the note, as if pressure could turn ink back into a different past. A memory flashed, 10 years old, 10 years sharp. Professor, my throat tightened. When I turned down Harvard to stay and help Damien build his startup, you tried to stop me. I swallowed. Did you already know he wasn't trustworthy? Professor Rowan went quiet for a long time. He didn't look at me. He looked out the window, where grey clouds gathered like bruises. It wasn't about trusting him or not, he said finally, slow and deliberate. I've always believed one thing. You should never bury your dream for any man. Before I could answer, his phone vibrated harshly on the desk. He picked up, listened to only a few sentences. His expression dropped. Yes, he said. We'll be there. He hung up and turned to me. The calm in his face now sharpened into urgency. The hospital called. Damien is critical again. But before he lost consciousness, he recorded a video statement. They want us to come watch. The hospital smelled the same as before, disinfectant and cold metal, the kind of smell that crawls into your clothes and refuses to leave. This time, there were police outside Damien's room. He was moved to ICU, an officer told us, handing over a tablet. This is the video he asked the hospital to send directly to investigators. The screen lit. Damien lay on a hospital bed, lips tinted purple, skin waxy under fluorescent light. His voice was so weak it sounded like every word cost him a year. Victor! Hayes! He rasped. He had to stop to breathe, then force the rest out. Panic and despair tangled in his eyes. He planned everything, lying to Lena that the baby was gone, selling the child to an American couple for investment money. Damien's breath shuddered. Planting people to get close, destroying our marriage. All of it. His idea. My nails dug into my palm so hard I should have bled. But I didn't feel pain, only heat and ice at the same time. In the video, Damien started coughing violently, then tried again, voice breaking. Recently, he found out she's investigating the baby. Damien's eyes widened, fear swallowing him whole. He arranged for someone to tamper with her brakes. An accident. If it fails, he'll keep using poison. The video ended. Silence sat heavy between us. I remembered the brake failure days earlier, my car skidding down a slick slope. The sickening moment I realized I couldn't stop. The way I'd laughed afterward and called it bad luck. It wasn't luck. It was a hand at my throat. We've applied for an arrest warrant, the officer said. But it looks like Victor Hayes caught the scent. He left the mainland on a flight this morning. He's in Hong Kong. Hong Kong is 2 hours away, Professor Rowan said, jaw tight. If he catches another flight to a non-extradition country, this gets far more complicated. Miles filed for an exit ban, I said, voice flat like a machine. God, please let it be in time. We walked out to the parking lot, and my phone rang. Unknown number, I answered. And my scalp went cold before he even spoke. Lena Ward. That voice low, familiar, hit like a fist. Victor Hayes, I said. And it wasn't a question. Behind him, I heard airport noise. Announcements. Footsteps. You think you've won? He laughed softly, the kind of laugh that meant he was still enjoying himself. I opened my recording app instantly and pressed the phone to my ear. You're nationally wanted, I said, voice like ice. Evidence? He drawled, contempt dripping off every syllable. You forget I still have cards you haven't seen. Like the weak spot in your son's adoptive parents' life. Or, his voice dropped, the antidote Damien needs. My heart seized so hard it felt like it folded in half. Say it clearly, I bit out. What antidote? He's been poisoned for years, Victor murmured. Not something a normal hospital can fix. There is one specific antidote. A pause deliberate, cruel, and right now, I'm the only one who knows where it is. Beside me, Professor Rowan's eyes locked on my screen as he tried to pull location data with shaking fingers. If you want Damien alive, Victor continued, you withdraw every complaint. You hand over the original design and transfer the rights. You have no other choice. Keep dreaming, I snapped. You're already finished. Then let's see, he said lightly. The line went dead. I turned to Professor Rowan. He shook his head once. Too short. Not enough for a lock. But he's definitely in Hong Kong. Fire crawled up my ribs. If the antidote is real, I said, voice shaking now, Damien doesn't have time. Before we could move, my phone flashed with a breaking news alert. Suspect in major economic crimes intercepted at Hong Kong airport. I stared. Professor Rowan stared. We both tapped the headline at the same time. Victor Hayes had tried to leave Hong Kong on a fake passport. He was arrested on the spot. For one breathless second, satisfaction surged through my chest, hot, bright, almost dizzying. Finally, I whispered. This time, he has nowhere left to run. Professor Rowan didn't soften. And now we take the antidote from him, he said, voice hard. We don't waste an hour. Neither did we.